Hello, beautiful people. My name is Athol. Let's jump into it. And today I want to talk about just sort of thoughts and process. I don't really have a hard and fast point that I'm trying to get to with this one. So I pretty much took one of those internet journeys, I think yesterday, where you click on something, that has a link, you click on that, that has a link, you click on that, and you 20 clicks in, you've come to sort of a different place, different thoughts, and you can't remember what you first read that started off that whole chain. Anyway, the thing that I first read that caught my attention was a statement that was along the lines of that 70% of all marriage conflict is between anxious wives and avoidant husbands. So that really caught my attention, of course, because I just did that whole thing on anxious wives the last couple of weeks. And the concept of avoidant husbands, I think, is really intriguing and interesting to me. I've been thinking for a long time about putting together some sort of series or book on sensitive spouses, and I don't think it's going to be balanced to do it just on the wives as opposed to not on the husbands as well. So that's where I sort of started off, and of course, as always, it sort of seems to somehow lead back to John Gottman, and more specifically the 7 principles of making marriage work, which I was pretty close to ordering on Amazon, and then the little voice in my head's like, pretty sure you still have that somewhere, and sure enough, it was on the bookshelf behind me. I cannot for the life of me remember reading it before, and I've only gone through the first couple of chapters this morning, and it's just really, really good ideas and thoughts and insights just leaping off the page. So much that I agree with, and so much that I have sort of come to understand and accept through, trial by combat that was here all the time. So one of the things that really jumped out was the statement, it's a biological fact. Men are more easily overwhelmed by marital conflict than are their wives. And I think that really is true. And I've seen an awful lot of that, where guys are having some sort of conflict, they do withdraw, they do shut down, and then slowly over time, the wife slowly gets driven crazy by the lack of connection or getting through. She eventually just shuts down and gives up, and then 2, 3, 4, 10, 14 years later, the marriage somehow explodes or ends or whatever. So I do think there is a lot to be said for that thought of, guys get emotionally overwhelmed. And in fact, it's sort of as I was reading, it was sort of ironically amusing in that he justifies that thought by, reaching back into evolutionary psychology and talking about, this is what guys needed to do to survive. When there was any question of conflict, they needed to get some sort of adrenaline rush. They needed their blood pressure to go up. They needed to be worked up in order to fight if there was some form of conflict. Fast forward to the modern age, and you're having some sort of fight with your wife, who is 9 inches shorter than you and 80 pounds lighter, and you're still being flooded with adrenaline and being worked up, and there's no real need for it. So it's a really interesting thought. Coming around to some more thoughts that I've had on it is that whole thing of being avoidant and stonewalling sort of feels ironically a little bit like the same thought of the whole red pill game thought of STFU, shut the freak up. And that is essentially saying, okay, your relationship's in a bad place. Don't talk at all, because you've been talking all the time up till now, and that's been making the relationship worse. Every time you talk and communicate, you drive down your attraction, you display weakness, you're whining and complaining and nagging, and that's just killing it all and driving the wife or girlfriend further away. So just shut the freak up, hit the gym, dress better, act better, be a man, lead more, and she'll come around. And I think there is a lot to be said for that. I think it works to a reasonable degree. In fact, it kind of dovetails really nicely into some of these thoughts. The first one being is if you're just not complaining, you're not whining, you're not begging, pleading, you're not injecting this ton of negativity into your relationship. And it's stopping what Gottman calls, the harsh startup to conversations. You're also cutting away 3 of the 4 horsemen. The 4 horsemen of relationship doom or apocalypse or whatever. I can't remember what it was. I'll find it again. But it cuts away the 3 of those 4 horsemen. It cuts away criticism, contempt, and defensiveness. We'll get to stonewalling. And if you take away 3 of those things, you're cutting away a ton of negativity. And it stops you getting into these, really negative cycles where things get worse and worse just by shutting your mouth. So I've seen guys do that, and I've seen them get real results. So in that sense, it really dovetails well with, shut the freak up. It works well. The flip side to that is that guys are by nature somewhat avoidant, as he's pointed out. And when you take that concept of shut the freak up, it encourages and justifies and sort of locks in that thought of you shouldn't communicate, you shouldn't emote, you shouldn't be trying to be warm and connective, because that's what destroys the attraction. That's what drives you away and lowers your interest, and that's what makes things worse. You should be clamming up, holding frame, being this rock, and being someone that she just can't really sort of overcome. Well, that's just textbook stonewalling. That's just textbook not having emotional connection, which is one of the things women particularly need from a relationship. So after a certain point, shut the freak up becomes really counterproductive. It's going to make things worse, and not just minorly worse, significantly worse. So in my experience, I've basically seen it. It's like you can only do it for so long. I think the shut the freak up policy works at the beginning, but you're going to reach a plateau point whereupon you really do have to change and be a little warmer, more emotive, more connective, talk more, say what you want, listen, and be influenced by your wife. Otherwise, there's not much relationship there. Why are you even in the relationship if you think acting like you're not in a relationship is what makes the relationship better? So that's kind of the maelstrom of thoughts for the day. That's where I am. Hope you liked it. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. If you want to complete my thoughts or leave comments, please do. Anyway, that's it for today, and I'll talk to you soon.